welcome to the latest episode of Movie Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today I'm going to be reviewing one of my most anticipated films, not only of 2021, but probably one of my most anticipated films since 1989, and we are talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters is probably one of those films that has been a part of my life for pretty much my whole life. When I think back to the movies that I remember when I was a kid, like the first films that I remember. Obviously, you guys have heard me talk about Jaws and Jurassic Park as two of my favorite films of all time. But when I think back to the first films that I remember watching as a child, there are four movies that pop up in my head. Three of them are animated, and one is Ghostbusters, and that's American Tail, Land Before Time, Oliver and Company, which is the first film I ever saw in a movie theater when I was a baby, and then of course Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is a very, very important film to me. I love the cast. I love the comedy. I love the ghost elements. I loved the cartoon series when I was a kid. I had the toys. I had the entire cartoon series on DVD. I love Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 2, as a kid, I really, really enjoyed. As an adult, it's not that great, but it's still the four leads in it, and I still enjoyed it. 2016's Ghostbusters, nowhere near as good. I don't hate the 2016 film, but it's definitely not a good movie. So going into this film, I was incredibly excited to see it because it's basically Ghostbusters 3. You're bringing back a lot of the older cast. You're bringing back some nostalgia moments of the older films, and it's not trying to be its own thing. It's trying to be a continuation to the two films that we love, or at least the original film that we love. And when I saw the first trailer for this film, I was a little hesitant. I was a little held back because it did feel very Stranger Things, E.T., Super 8-esque, and it didn't feel like the Ghostbusters film that we should get or that we needed to get. So I was a little kind of held back on it. The second trailer came out. I definitely felt a lot more positive towards the film, probably because I was prepared for what I was going to see. So I was really going into this film hoping for the best, but expecting to not be basically fully excited for what I got out of the film. Going into the movie, in terms of cast, the new cast, you've got McKenna Grace as Phoebe. McKenna Grace is a phenomenal young actress. She ranks right up there with Millie Bobby Brown as probably one and two of the young leading lady cast going through. McKenna Grace is phenomenal in everything I've seen her in. I love her as an actress, and I was really excited to see her in this film. Finn Wolfhard, I mean, everyone knows from Stranger Things. He's a pretty solid actor in the film. You got Carrie Coon, who plays Callie, their mother. I've loved Carrie Coon and everything she's been in, so seeing her in this definitely helped. And of course, you got People's Magazine's World's Sexiest Man, Paul Rudd. And of course, you put Paul Rudd in anything, I'm definitely going to check it out and watch it because I love Paul Rudd. The rest of the cast, are a bunch of relative no-names, people who I don't really know. I mean, you got some people that pop up here and there that are just like character actors that you like recognize and stuff like that. But that's basically the main cast outside of two other characters that I'll touch on. In terms of the plot, if you haven't seen the trailers, Callie is the daughter of Egon Spengler, who was played by the late Harold Ramis in the original films. He basically abandoned her when she was a child and moved to this town called Summerville, Oklahoma. Egon has passed, and they are basically left with that house. So Callie takes Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace, and Trevor, played by Finn Wolfhard, and basically moves them to Oklahoma to kind of basically take care of this farm and hopefully fix it up and sell it. Thus, that's when the rest of the film begins, and I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to explain anything more. If you want to know more, go see the movie. In terms of the cast, everyone I think does a really solid job. McKenna Grace is as Phoebe. I do think she does a little much when she's trying to act like Sheldon Cooper, and I think a lot of that comes because she has been on the show Young Sheldon, and that was one thing that, it's not a bad thing for anyone who hasn't seen that, but for someone who has watched the TV show Young Sheldon, I just couldn't not see, where I felt like she was just doing an impression of Sheldon Cooper in the movie. It's not something that deters you from watching the film. It was just something I kind of wish it was a little bit different. But McKenna Grace does a great job, nonetheless, in the film. It was just something that me, personally, I had to get over. Finn Wolfhard as Trevor. He's not a main focal point of the film. He's just kind of the older brother, kind of like how Nancy in Stranger Things would be. So he's solid in the movie, but he's not the focal point. The focal point is really Phoebe and kind of everyone around her. Carrie Coon as Callie, I think has a lot of emotional weight going through this film, especially because of the attachments or detachments from Harold Ramis's Egon for her past. And Paul Rudd's basically being Paul Rudd. He's basically playing the fan. He's basically us in this movie. He is the one who remembers the Ghostbusters, who was a fan of the Ghostbusters. When stuff comes up in the film that is Ghostbuster-esque, he's like a little fangirl about it, which is basically everyone of us watching the film. So Paul Rudd does a great job of that. To me, a standout, and I was fully expecting to hate this character or be very, very annoyed from this character, is that there is a young character or actor who goes by Logan Kim. He plays Podcast, which is a character who befriends Phoebe at summer school. This kid is hilarious. His lines, his delivery, his dialogue, his facial reactions. This kid knocks every scene out of the park and steals so much of this movie from the rest of the cast. I was not expecting to like this character, but he was definitely the most welcoming surprise of this film. And I really enjoyed Logan Kim as Podcast. Celeste O'Connor, who plays Lucky, she's kind of like or Finn Wolfhard's Trevor. She's an older teenager. She's there to kind of be a part of the group and do things that maybe Phoebe and Podcast can't do because they're too young, such as like driving the car and stuff like that. She's fine in the role. I mean, I think she has a little more to do than Trevor does in the role, but she's solid in the film throughout. In terms of callbacks and connective tissue to Ghostbusters, the original films, yes, it is definitely a sequel or reboot connective tissue to the first two Ghostbusters films. There are definitely some callbacks. There are some Easter eggs. There are some nostalgia-heavy-esque scenes and dialogue and things that you're going to see in this film that are going to call you back to the original films. Does it benefit you to watch the first two movies again before you see Ghostbusters Afterlife? Absolutely. Is it necessarily? No, it's not. I know a lot of people are using this as a weapon to knock the film or to say that it's just a nostalgia film, kind of like how Force Awakens was for the Star Wars films. I highly, highly disagree. Do all the nostalgia or callbacks or Easter eggs work in the film? No, they don't. But the ones that do work incredibly well, and when they popped up, it made me feel good. And I'm not using the nostalgia goggles on this. I think that they were a connective tissue that works well in the film. Not all of them land, but most of them do. In terms of the problems with the film, most of the issues I have with the film are very nitpicky and things that maybe I noticed that probably the next 100 people who watch this movie don't notice. So in terms of attacking the film based off of these little nitpicks, like mainly to me the town of Somerville, I think is a real problem in this film. I feel like no one in the town really cares about what's going on in their town of this film. There are certain situations and certain things that happen in this movie that innocent bystanders, such as like the characters of New York in the first Ghostbusters film, were very reactive towards and acted as well with the main cast about a ghost popping up or something crazy happening, whereas the cast of Somerville, or the townspeople of Somerville, seem to not really give a flying F about what's going on. The police are relatively inconsequential in this film outside of like one scene in the movie. So it just felt very weird that there's all this craziness happening and you see people just walking down the street acting like nothing's going on, or something crazy happening inside of a store, and you see a character running away from something very, very big, and you see a character walking around with their shopping cart like they don't see anything when it's like 5 feet next to them. It was just things like that stood out to me that really made it frustrating for me, but the average movie viewer, are you going to spot that or notice that? Probably not. Another thing that I think this movie does lack is a kick-ass soundtrack. One of the great things from both Ghostbusters 1 and Ghostbusters 2, outside of the score, was that they had memorable soundtracks. There are songs that would pop up during certain scenes that I still remember to this day, and that's something that is incredibly lacking in Ghostbusters Afterlife. The score is great. Their use of the Ghostbusters theme and the score throughout the film I think is incredibly well done, but the lack of a soundtrack in between certain scenes that could have maybe made the film not feel less quiet, I think really could have made this film kind of lively up a little bit and maybe added a little more of a punch to it. So the lack of soundtrack definitely does hurt. But the most important thing about this film is, does it have heart? Do you feel something for these characters? Do you feel something for the franchise in this film? And absolutely you do. There is one big connective tissue to this film, and that's all I'm going to say, that this movie lives and dies off of how you feel about that connective tissue of this story, and it worked for me. By the end of this film, I was in tears. I don't cry very often when it comes to movies, but there's a part in the final 15 minutes that happens that had tears streaming down my face in the happiest and saddest of ways. And I think if you are connected to these characters like I am, you're going to be right there with me in terms of crying, kind of like you would do in Toy Story 3. If you're not connected to these characters and you're not connected to the tissue of what this story is trying to tell, that's probably not going to hit as hard for you as it did for me. But bottom line is, when it comes to Ghostbusters Afterlife, did I enjoy watching the film? Yes, I did. Do I want to see more of this franchise? Do I want to see more of these characters? Do I want to see more of this world that's being created in this film? Absolutely, I do. Are there problems that need to be fixed? Yes, there is. But bottom line comes down to it is, Sean, should I see this movie? If you are a fan of the Ghostbusters, absolutely you should be seeing this film. It is a requirement, if you're a Ghostbusters fan, to see this film, because it is Ghostbusters 3. If you're not a Ghostbusters fan, are you still going to enjoy this movie? I think you will. And I think if you're not a fan of Ghostbusters and you watch this movie, I think it might open the door for you to either rewatch the Ghostbusters films and find the love of those films, or if you've never seen them, opens the door and makes you want to go see those previous two films because of how well I think this film does in terms of creating new fans as well as being beloved to the current fans of the franchise. And I cannot wait, and I hope that this movie does well, that we do get to see more coming out of this franchise. Going to my overall score, I kind of been jumping around here and there on the score for me, because I'm trying to feel if I'm, do I have the nostalgia goggles on, or did I really think the movie is as good as I think it is? Ultimately, I'm resting on the score. I'm going to give it, it's between an 85 and an 86% for me. Based off of certain respects, that's where it's going to lie for me, which is a really, really good score for this movie overall. But ultimately, it comes down to you guys. Should you go see this film? And my answer is yes, and have fun with this movie. It is a lot of fun. I enjoyed the cast. I enjoyed the surprises, the Easter eggs, the emotional heart that this film has. It is definitely incredibly well done in this film, and this particular scene that I'm talking about that led me to tears is easily going to be in my top scenes of 2021. So if you guys enjoyed this review, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up with the Movie Crusaders. And of course, don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, I will be having a spoiler review of this film with my Weekend Crusaders co-star, Brian Michaels, where we will be talking about this movie in depth. We will be going over the scenes of the film. We will be going over that particular scene that I'm talking about, what we liked, what we disliked. We will be having that spoiler review available for you guys to check out. So check this review out. Go see the movie. After you see the movie, come back, watch that spoiler review with Brian and I as we talk about the film and go over everything that we liked and disliked about the film. Also, Brian and I will be here also for the Weekend Crusaders. That'll be out at some point this weekend. We've been very busy with holiday season and, of course, doing the reviews for this movie on its own. It will be out at some point this weekend. I don't know if it'll be Saturday or Sunday night, but the Weekend Crusaders will be out this weekend. And then there will also be a review for King Richard, which is in theaters and also on HBO Max. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, till next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
you're still here. It's over. Go home.